Time Team have been invited up from the southern comforts of England to one of the remotest outposts of the British Isles. We're on our way to Fetlar, the easternmost of the Shetland Islands. This is the tiny village of Hooby, this is the village shop, and just behind it, down this narrow passageway, is the back garden of Nick and Lynn Boxall. 6 years ago, Nick was digging in the back garden when he chanced upon some finds made out of soapstone. These are fishing weights, these are fragments from domestic vessels. Apparently they're Viking and could be at least 1,000 years old. So they want to know, do they have a Viking house in their back garden? And that's not all. Just 3/4 of a mile away is the most famous and enigmatic Viking site on the island. This mound is known as the Giant's Grave, and it's thought to be a very rare Viking boat burial. If so, is there a Viking in it with his treasure? We've got just 3 days to find out. Mick, a lot to be sorted out.
Yeah.
What's the strategy going to be?
Well, we've got two sites to deal with here. We've got this one in the garden, which from the fine sounds of it might be a settlement, probably Viking. And they normally come in single farms rather than villages, so we might have the whole lot just here. And the other one down the road, which sounds as if it's a burial, and they often bury them in either ships or in ship-shaped mounds. And so we're going to be looking at both sides of Viking life. We're going to dig both of these sites.
But don't we know quite a lot about the Vikings around here anyway?
On some levels we do. We have lots of place names and we know that they must have been here because we're right in the middle of the Viking seaways, right in the north of Britain. So they have to have been here, but we haven't found the evidence, not yet.
So the pressure's on. And Mick's decided to kick off our quest in the garden by reopening the area where Nick Boxall uncovered the soapstone finds.
When we first moved into the house, I was digging a vegetable plot over here in the garden. You can just sort of make out the outline of the square area here. And I started off with the trench going across there on the left and worked back over this way. And pieces turned up in the far corner over there.
But you don't mind us extending your trenches and spoiling your beautiful garden?
No, I don't think so at all. I think it would be fine to get the garden cleared up in a lot of ways. So it'd be splendid to think that there might be something here that you could find. That'd be terrific.
We've taken Nick at his word. We're going to destroy his garden. Out go the children's toys and the climbing frame. And in comes the big orange trowel. We're going to start with a fairly large trench. But if Geophys can identify features in the rest of the garden, there's every chance it'll get much larger. We've got to go a bit more gently at the Giant's Grave, our other site. Boat burials are very rare and technically difficult to excavate, and we don't want to miss anything. In charge of the site is Magnar Dalland, an expert excavator of Viking boats. He's decided to open 2 small trenches into the heart of the mound, initially to confirm that this really is a boat. It's a beautiful spot to be buried, isn't it? You could quite understand why a Viking would want to have his grave here.
Yeah, I'm not convinced about it though. See, when I came in the field this morning and looked at it, it doesn't look anything like the Scandinavian ones that I've seen, you know, in Denmark, places like that.
Well, it is boat-shaped.
Well, not really. I mean, in Denmark, they are actually a boat shape with stones around the edge and the stone the front and the back. I mean, the mound's a bit sort of long, but it doesn't look like that sort of thing at all.
So you're saying this might just be a dump of stones at the edge of someone's field?
Well, yes, but there is one compelling piece of evidence, look. If you look at this stuff here, and Fraser's got one out the box, we've got 40-odd of these boat rivets.
Where did they come from?
They came from an excavation dug into this mound in the 60s.
Are these Viking?
Yeah, they've been looked at. And
what are they for?
well, they're for holding the planks together on the side of the boat. So you put the two planks and you put the rivet through.
But does the fact that we've got rivets necessarily mean we've got a Viking boat burial?
Well, that's my worry, you see, whether this is being recycled, whether it's stuff coming up from a wreck or off the beach to a settlement here. There's a lot of earthworks at the top of the hill. There could be something else here. So I feel very worried about it at the moment.
The first step to allaying Mick's fears will be to find a lot more rivets. A Viking boat would have been held together by several hundred metal pins. And if this is a boat burial, the mound should be absolutely stuffed with them. But there are none in Trench 1. This is where there was a dig in the 1960s, and it's empty. In Trench 2, though, Phil's getting very excited.
It's absolutely awash with them, Mick. I mean, as a sample, the sort of thing we're getting. Look at that.
Oh, crikey.
Isn't that a whopper?
As each rivet's uncovered, it's marked with a red golf tee. And Phil soon discovers that the rivets have survived in a variety of different forms. Some are just stains in the ground, others are identifiable as metal objects, and others again are still attached to wood.
So that's the head of the nail, and this is just corroded wood.
Yeah, it's wood. When nail corroded, it sort of preserves the wood. So this is mineralized wood, actually.
And these marks down there, then, that's the actual grain of the wood, is it?
Exactly what it is.
Which is great, but it doesn't yet prove this was a boat burial. The question now is, are the rivets randomly scattered, suggesting Mick's recycled pile of debris, or have they survived in a pattern, as you'd expect if they were once part of a boat?
Well, that's 15.21.
To help us answer the question, Henry's recording the exact three-dimensional position of every one and plotting the results onto his computer.
I can't see any lines in it, really, Henry.
Well, at the moment, I'm getting the sense of a line coming around here, but I mean, it is early days yet.
Can you home in on just that little bit there?
Yeah.
I just thought there might be more of a pattern if we got closer to it. Have you got them all plotted? Because it doesn't look particularly in lines or anything, or am I not seeing it right?
Whether or not Mick's pessimism turns out to be justified, no one's in any doubt there were once Vikings here. We know from monastic records they arrived in Scotland and the Northern Isles sometime in the 800s. Though why they'd want to colonise a group of cold, featureless islands in the middle of nowhere has always been a mystery to me. It's pretty bleak here, though, isn't it? Was it that attractive for them?
Well, I think it was. I mean, when they came here, they were land hungry. This picture of field shows how little lands they had in some areas, going straight down into the water. And the flat land that they did have, they were all fighting over, disagreeing over. It had been divided so many times between families that they were becoming unviable units. And they were fighting each other over lands. They were absolutely desperate for lands to farm and settle.
And I think that it's a view that we might have from southern England that, where it's very lush and the crops grow well, that it's pretty bleak up here. But if you look at it from the other way around, looking southwards, then this flat land with cultivable land and so on would look fantastic, wouldn't it? If you come from permanent snow and hardly any farmable land at all, this must have seemed like a paradise.
And it's a good jumping off point as well if you want to go further south into Britain or north up into Faroe and into Iceland. Where better to be than here as a base.
These are John's geophys results from the garden. As you can see, there's an awful lot of noise and very little information. In John's words, the garden's been completely trashed, so these really aren't much use at all. But fortunately, we didn't wait for the geophys before we started the excavation. Already we've got quite a big hole. And Sophie, even to my untutored eye, it seems to me we've got some kind of activity going on. What is it?
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. We've got this dark black stuff, and then there's some orange stripes around, and it's a burnt area. And we're just trying to find out now exactly what that means and whether it could be part of a building, perhaps.
If it is a building, what might it be?
Well, it could be something like a central hearth within a long house building. I mean, if it's a Norse house, certainly an elongated building, maybe 20 metres long or so.
Tony? Hazel's theory that the hearth is at the centre of the house is supported by the fact that the area around is strewn with Viking finds, like this bit of bowl.
There's the rim, narrow, the base here, coming, we don't know how it goes, but a beautifully produced pot, hardly a work mark on it. So someone's taken time and pride over that.
Although the site's stuffed with fragments of bowls, cooking vessels and the odd gaming piece, not a single one is made from pottery. They've all been carved from a local stone, steatite or soapstone, which, as Phil discovers, is because it's so easy to work.
So what do I do? Just kind of...
Gently push.
That is quite incredible. Oh!
It's all right, don't worry about that.
That's all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
No, we got like...
You've actually got the gouge upside down, Phil, at the moment.
It works better.
Yeah, there's a lot more damage that way.
Oh, that's better. Look at that.
Yeah,
I'm going to like a house on fire now. It's fascinating stuff, though, isn't it?
In fact, in just 2 hours, Tony Sherratt is able to transform a shapeless lump of steatite into this beautiful Viking-style lamp.
I can rather sort of see myself lighting my way to bed with that. I congratulate you. That's a fine piece of work.
None of which is any help to Sophie, who'd happily swap a dozen lamps for a decent stretch of wall. Working on the theory that our trench has flukily come down inside the house, she's decided to extend the trench here and here in the hope of hitting stonework. If there's nothing solid in her extensions, then it'll be very hard to claim there's a Viking house in this back garden.
But I think at the moment it doesn't look too different to the
The loose stone we had on top, yeah.
Have you got me a boat berry yet then? Doesn't look like it. Looks like a pile of stones.
Exactly, that's what we seem to have come down to here. It's just masses of stones.
Did they put great cairns of boulders over the top of Viking ship burials?
No, I never heard about that before, but then again there's only a few graves that have been, both graves that have been excavated, so this could be the first.
Right, right.
See, you sound as though you want to write it off just like that.
It doesn't look like what I expected. It looks more like a cairn than anything.
Look, we're getting more and more golf tees, and golf tees means more nails, rivets. And in fact, when you get right to the edge of the trench, there is a very marked set of stones along there.
But surely, if we were going to sort of justify that, there ought to be a similar line of stones over here. After all, in Denmark, that's what they have, isn't it?
You got the oval boat setting.
Sort of, you're looking out here somewhere.
Yeah, sort of with a bow shape there and a bow shape here.
You want to extend a trench?
Well, I mean, it's not a lot of work to find if there's a line of stones there, is it?
So what we're going to do then, we're going to run that section through there, get the trench, and bring it back out here.
Yeah, you're only going to have to come to somewhere here because you're in a hollow then.
Then you'd be happy then, I suppose.
Well, no, it still doesn't look very convincing.
Please go away. We'll produce something that is more like what you want.
All right.
Go on,
I'll leave you to it. I'll come back later.
While Phil and Magnar expand Trench 1, Mick does what he's told and heads off to Nick and Lynn's back garden, where, in the extension nearest the house, the archaeologists have hit the stonework they were hoping for. Some evidently demolished, some in situ. And among the debris, some juicy discoveries.
Oh, crikey, look at that. It's got a cross on it.
Absolutely.
What on earth could that be?
Well, it looks like one of these early grave markers. You know, you set the stone up a, you know, metre, whatever high, with a cross on the end just to mark the grave.
But the early Vikings weren't Christians, were
No,
they?
no, I mean, this would be earlier than that. This would be sort of pre-Viking, 6th, 7th century, something like that. They don't occur very often. I mean, they do occur on these early Christian sites, and they might be reused, of course, if it's being used in a later building.
Well, it actually got better as we continued to search, because lo and behold, as we carried on, we found an enormous void going underneath these stones.
It's true.
How big is it?
Well, that's an interesting point, because if we stick the tape in, we can see that, you know, if it's a tunnel of some kind, it certainly seems to go a decent distance.
Oh, look at that. That's at least a metre, isn't it?
Well, yes, just about. It seems to go in that direction. It seems like there's been some collapse because there was a rubbish heap here, and some of this has been taken out or removed.
Sophie, have you got this thing over the other side, past the disturbance?
Yes, absolutely. We've just got a little bit, I think, surviving here. And it's these big stones here. They may be collapsed, but I was just travelling around and it looks like there may be another bit of void continuing under there.
How exciting. What do you reckon it might be?
It looks too big for a drain, doesn't it? I mean, it almost looks as if it could be something like one of these souterrains that you get on a later prehistoric. Well, it's like
What's a souterrain?
Well, like an underground storage tunnel or escape tunnel or something like that. But
Hold on. If this is a souterrain, then maybe it's not the wall of our structure after all.
Well, that's what we need to find out. What we're going to have to do is actually extend the trench again in that direction to see if we can follow this and work out, is it a souterrain or is it a wall?
So tomorrow we're going to work out whether this is a tunnel or a longhouse or something else that we don't know yet. And over on the other side, we're going to get down into the giant's grave, pull back the stones into the very heart of the grave itself. Join us after the break. Beginning of day 2. And there's frantic activity at the giant's grave as the archaeologists continue their quest for a Viking boat burial. The good news is that Mick's extension to Trench 1 has revealed a stone boundary on the land side to go with the one on the coast side. So our hopes that this could be a boat are still alive. But only just. No one's ever found a Viking boat full of stones, and the mound's packed with them. And although we're now up into the 40s with the rivets, they're still just a random scatter. What can we do to really nail down the shape of this boat?
Well, I think we have to open up a trench down here to see if we can find more of the rivets to confirm that we got the boat there.
Magnar thinks we're too hung up on the stones. He wants to hoik them out to see what's underneath. He also reckons if this is a boat, then its very shape means the deeper we go, the more rivets we should find. And the more rivets we find, the better our chance of establishing a pattern. The story about the bloke who's buried under here?
No.
Is there one?
Yeah. There was a storm during the Viking times.
Yeah.
The boat was blown up onto the shore, and there's only one chap on board, all the rest had been washed overboard. He was very, very sick and he died, but before he died, he said to them, would it be all right if you buried me in my ship?
Yeah.
Just on the cliff edge here, with all my gold on me.
Right.
And so they did. But there is one problem, which is that it's cursed. That if anybody tries to excavate it in order to get the gold back, they'll go blind.
Right. I'll give those to you then, Tony.
Leaving the archaeologists in the danger zone, I'm keen to put as much distance between me and the giant's grave as possible. This is Underhool, on the neighbouring island of Umst. Nestling in the shadow of an Iron Age settlement is a fully excavated Viking longhouse. Oh, you can see it really clearly here, can't you?
You can, yeah.
It's so close to the sea.
Yeah, and there's a bay just nearby where they could have pulled in their boats, and very good fishing just offshore. And we're surrounded by really good hill and arable land as well, so it's an ideal place to live.
Perfect. Can we go in?
Yeah.
And presumably this is the big living room?
Yep, so about 20 metres long.
So that's about the size of the one that we think we've got?
Yep.
And we've got evidence of marking right in the middle of ours, burning or something. Would the fireplace have been here?
No, in this building it's a bit unusual. The roof was supported by 2 posts that were in the centre of the floor. And obviously if you'd had the fire right by the posts, they might have burnt down. So the fireplace is actually against the wall in this building.
Massively thick walls, aren't they? Why are they so big?
Well, they were built from turf and stone, and as the turf decayed, they would have had to be built again.
So every time you rebuilt, they got bigger and bigger and bigger?
That's right, and it's a bit of a wobbly shape you can see as well from all the rebuilding.
What's this over here? Presumably this is an outhouse?
No, actually this is part of the earlier settlement. It's a souterrain, an underground passage.
And this is what we might have on our site then?
Yeah, it could well be, yeah.
One of the most obvious differences is the size of this stone. We've got nothing like that on our site.
Not yet, but we haven't found our walls yet, and it's quite possible that when we find our walls, we'll have stone this size as well.
So this is what we're after. But while we appear to have found the hearth and a mystery tunnel that could be a souterrain, we're still short of structural walls. This is what we should have, and all we've got are these.
All I seem to have is these quite sort of flimsy linear features running through here. There's one running across there.
Where all these bits of stone are packed in?
That's right, sort of moderately compact stone running one across here and then one up here as well to the north, another linear feature.
What do you think those are?
Well, if we're postulating at the moment, we have some form of, you know, longhouse of some description. Yeah. I think that these could possibly be internal walls.
But we've got nothing that we could really say was walls and sort of outer edges. We don't even know that we're not outside with most of this site here, do we?
Although the hearth is a bit suspicious. I think generally, if you've got a hearth this size, it probably would have been under some sort of roof. Right. So that's what's making us think we're in a building.
It all suggests to me that we should open more area up if we think we can cope with that.
Yes, definitely. Well,
certainly this way we perhaps should.
How far can we go?
Probably what, 5 metres? Somewhere across
that would double it. So
somewhere back to about here.
Yeah. Great.
Yep. That would give us a really decent area, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So in goes the machine, and out comes yet another swathe of Nick's lawn.
Lots of early maps.
Meanwhile, Val is widening our search.
In fact, we've got these wonderful scatol boundary maps which have just come to light. It comes down here.
She's been scouring maps and historical documents for evidence of occupation, like ancient boundaries and Viking place names, across the whole island. And now she's teamed up with Henry to see if she can match that information with physical remains on the ground. She's got until the end of tomorrow to find out how many Vikings settled on Fetla and where they lived.
These are boat noosts. Do you see it's been lined with stones? It's where they would have had their boats and pulled them up out of the water to overwinter them here.
Oh, right, yeah, so we got a U shape effectively, which you drag into to protect you from the wind and so
That's
on.
right, yes. And then the houses would have probably been quite close by because you'd want your house to be fairly close to where you had your boat, which was probably your greatest asset.
But when I think of the Vikings, it's not their domestic arrangements that spring instantly to mind. So I want to find out from Viking expert Colleen Beatty whether their bloodthirsty reputation is entirely deserved.
Well, it depends on your perspective. If you were a monk and you were being attacked quite frequently by the Vikings, as indeed seems to have been the case, then yes, but of course in 9th century, 8th, 9th century, there's a lot of people moving around attacking other people. It's not just Vikings.
So everyone was as bad as each other,
I think
the Vikings get the worst press. Is all this a bit speculative? Do we know anything tangible about what was going on?
There are sort of written records of it. I mean, the Orkney saga, for example, which is about Orkney, a bit further south of here, has got a couple of good stories in. One is of a chap called Harold Fairhair, I think it is, isn't it, who goes raiding twice a year, almost like people who go on a package holiday. So he sort of does his spring agricultural work, then he goes off on a raid, and then he comes back and gets his crops in, and then he goes off on another raid.
Oh! Bang on line again. Oh, this is like shelling peas, this is.
Magnar's decision to dig deeper at the giant's grave has been handsomely rewarded.
Oh, there's another one!
Not only has Phil struck a rich seam of rivets, they're beginning to form a pattern.
That's our first line that went right the way through, and now look, we've got another line coming.
And it's equal distance, you see?
Yeah. Well, this one, look, he slots in the middle.
Yeah.
He comes in there.
Yeah. There's a boat there. No, not this.
Whoa! Look at the size of that.
Once the new rivets have been logged onto Henry's model, it's even more convincing. In fact, Magnar now thinks he's got enough information to identify the type of boat we're excavating.
This is a boat that's we call a fairing because it's got 4 oars, and you can see there's 2 rowlocks on the other side, one there, one there, one here. And so up to 4 men could be rowing it. In fact, we've got the boat over here. That's
I was looking at that earlier, wondering if it was the sort of thing.
The basic shape is exactly the same.
Yeah, this one's got more strakes, and you can see the lines of rivets here, look.
This is what we found. The wood itself disappeared, but the rivets are still lying in line in the ground. So this is what we are finding now.
Right, this is our problem here, Sonia.
You can't take your eye off Phil for a second. Fresh from his triumph with the rivets, he's now discovered something much more mysterious.
Because we've got this large lump of corrosion with wood imprints, which goes right from there, right through to there.
Right, yeah. Well, I think what I would ask you to do is investigate a bit more around the edge and define it better.
We won't know what the mystery object is until Phil lifts it. But before he can do that, he's got to clear all the stones and soil from round it. Very carefully.
So it's even getting bigger.
As it gets bigger, the problems of getting it out get bigger too.
It's a hell of a thing, you know, isn't it? Why won't it end?
There's mystery at our supposed Viking house too.
But that's very odd, isn't it, to have 2 like that? I mean...
Still searching for an exterior wall, Jim has found another cross. Sophie has discovered another pile of stones.
You can see that there are holes going under.
And Hazel's tunnel goes on getting bigger and bigger.
It seems to continue down, so it's a big long structure of some sort.
So there's a cavity all the way along here.
It seems to be, yeah.
And here, and it stretches on over in that direction. And it carries on over here?
Yep, we've machined this off and got more of these big boulders showing up. And at the moment it looks like a demolished wall.
A wall and not a tunnel?
Yeah, here it looks like a wall. I think Hazel thinks she's got a tunnel.
But you think it's the same feature?
It can't be the same feature. I mean, it's obviously part of the same feature, but it can't be the same interpretation. It's either got to be one or the other.
Well, that one will go. Now then, the 64,000 one is whether I could get in underneath this one. Yeah, he'll go, I think.
No, it's moving the whole block, yes.
Don't let's mess about. We've no idea what this is, have we? We don't know if it's Viking. We don't know anything about it, really.
I'm still trying to be positive about it.
Wow. Grand.
So what do we do?
We've got to do more investigation, really.
How?
Extend the trench a little bit.
Again?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Which way?
Yes. Well, we've still got this question, are we inside or outside this wall, if it is a wall?
And there's not going to be plaster on the walls to let us know?
No. But the only thing we can do is possibly go that way just a little bit, just to see.
We can't go too far. We're practically at the house.
I mean, it's moving.
It is moving, yeah. What we want is to make sure that...
With all the stones safely removed, Sonia's encased the metal object in plaster of Paris to stop it falling apart as she lifts it.
My heart would bleed for you if you lifted it up and all fell out the bottom.
Me too. Let's just see if we can slip this under now.
That's the skill, is it?
Well, we'll see. stone there. I think I'll just remove that.
Now you turn it upside down.
It's like pineapple upside down.
There.
We're lucky. There you go.
There it is.
It's all right, isn't it?
I think we'll see if we can get an X-ray image of this, and we'll just pack this up, and I think we're going to catch the ferry.
In Nick's garden, Sophie's convinced the solution to her wall/drain problem lies under this tiny strip of grass. Is she right?
61.
And what will X-rays tell us about the mystery metal object from the giant's grave? Join us after the break. Two days ago, on the basis of some broken soapstone finds, we were invited up here to Shetland by the Boxalls, who wanted to know if they'd got a Viking house in their back garden. 48 hours later, what have we got? Some more broken soapstone finds and a big trench with some rubble in it which nobody seems to understand. We're nowhere nearer answering the question now than we were when we got here, are we, Mick?
No, well, that's what it feels like. Sophie, what are we going to do today to sort this out?
Well, I think it's actually going much better today.
Oh, better?
Yes, it's
so
much
you
better.
don't feel quite as despondent as we did?
No, I feel very positive. Do you remember yesterday we weren't sure whether we had a drain or a wall?
Yeah.
Well, we think we might actually have both. We dug a hole and we actually found the foundations of what appears to be a really quite big wall, and that's right along this line here.
Yeah.
And it looks as though there's been a drain put inside or on top of the wall, so possibly later.
And is this of a house?
Yeah, we think this is actually the back wall of the house running down the slope.
Hang on, if the house is facing this way, what about the fireplace over there?
Yeah, that's been confusing us. That actually may be part of a much earlier structure. It could even be an Iron Age, late Iron Age structure.
But if it's running away down the slope this way, though, then most of it will have been dug away when they built the house and the shop and everything.
Well, we've lost probably most of it, but there might still be just a little bit left just coming down this slope.
But this is speculation, isn't it?
No, look at the geophysics. You rubbished this yesterday. Look here. Is that not the wall turning there? Coming down the slope here?
If John's return is there, are we going to pick it up in the little extension of the trench which you wanted to dig yesterday?
Yeah, we hope so. Should be just here.
But we're missing a trick, aren't we, if we just do that? Because if the house wall is here and that's outside, then we're actually standing on the only bit that's inside that hasn't been cut away by this slope. Surely we should be taking the grass up here and looking here, shouldn't we?
Yes, you're probably right, actually, we should.
Well, by that time, we'll have excavated the whole garden, won't we? Yesterday afternoon, Sonia took a mysterious lump of corroded metal from the giant's grave to the nearest hospital for X-ray. 3 islands and 6 ferry rides later, she and the results are back.
Well, what do you make of that?
Wow, God. That's the lump of metal that we excavated this morning.
It certainly is. And what you can see is a row of nails on this side and on this side.
On that side as well.
And what's more, look at the length of that one.
Oh, yeah.
It starts here and it ends there. And then do you notice there's 2 sort of longitudinal lines? Well, this could well be wood grain running across the lot.
We got the keel. It has to be.
We got it.
It has to be. So you've got
Brilliant.
planks nailed on there and planks nailed on there.
Yeah.
And it comes away and the keel is through the middle.
Right the way through the whole lot.
Brilliant.
I think that's wonderful.
Now we've got the keel, morale at the giant's grave is soaring, because it means we're at the bottom of the boat and the burial itself can't be far away. But why bury someone in a boat in the first place?
It could be for the journey towards Valhalla, which was the Viking heaven. So it's a way of getting through to the other side.
Were they buried with grave goods?
Oh yes, definitely. You normally find, like if there's a male burial, you will find a weapon set like axe, swords, arrows, and apart from lesser objects like gaming pieces and other things. This was a female burial. You'll get keys and domestic utensils and brooches. So yes, you definitely have grave goods in there.
If there are any grave goods remaining, they're likely to be very fragile and could be just millimetres below the surface. So trowels are sheathed, and out comes the metal detector. There's plenty of troweling in the garden, though, where Mick's extension's looking promising. It's full of stonework.
Crikey, David, what's this?
Yes, I've got this enormous bowl, and that you can see the rim very clearly, just sort of poking out from the section.
Is it complete?
We don't know yet. I mean, we've had a sort of like poke around on the sides, but obviously it's in the section, so we won't know until we can take the archaeology back and lift it. I hope so, but I somehow doubt it.
Yeah, it's in a funny position, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that's what's really curious, because we've obviously got this drain coming through here, which is actually, it's been very well capped, very well cut blocks capping the drain, and the bowl seems to be sitting on the capping. I mean, whether actually it was a part of the capping, we don't know yet.
Yeah, and that's under the wall itself.
It does appear to be under the collapsed wall, the demolished wall.
Right.
If it's intact, this bowl could be the largest artefact we've ever found. The only problem is, how on earth are we going to get it out?
I think that's meant.
Magnar's caution has paid off. Without it, this small stone-like lump could easily have been damaged or discarded, and we'd have missed something a bit special.
And it's a bit broken off here, but it looks to me that this is the shape of an oval brooch.
Do you think it's a tortoise brooch that we found?
Yes, definitely. And you see here, you see on top of it, you see there's some small platforms where there used to be studs. So you've got one stud there, possibly another one here, and one there. They're covered in mud for the moment.
Yeah.
It'd be good to get a line of decoration done there.
Exactly,
So,
and when we clean up, we might see Viking-style animal decorations on it.
Hopefully, yeah. Is that organic?
This is a truly wonderful find. Only a handful of Viking brooches have ever been discovered in this country, and few of them so complete. If that's a brooch, does that mean that we've got a woman buried here?
Absolutely.
And if there's a woman here, could there be a man here as well?
That's always a possibility, yes.
Where do you think the burial chamber is?
It's a circular area that comes around like this, up there, and over there where Joe's digging.
But this is a small area even to bury one person in, let alone two. How would they have been buried?
I think they would have to be crouched, because there's not room for them to be like straight.
A crouched sort of fetal position?
Yes.
Before we lift the brooch, Magnar wants to explore the rest of the burial chamber to see if any other traces of its mortal cargo remain.
I've been carefully clearing down to this, Tony, and it looks to me like it might be intact. Oh, look. You see the edges in there?
Under the watchful eye of Nick and his daughter Rowan, Jim has removed the stonework above the bowl and is now exploring its extent.
You see the edges in there?
Can you see it, Rowan? Can you see it goes all the way round to there now? We may actually have the whole bowl. I think it might have been four.
Well, I mean, could have been maybe storage, maybe used it as an enormous cooking vessel to feed the family that may have lived in this house.
Further scraping reveals the bowl isn't quite intact.
You can see that the shape of it originally, all of this is broken off by the looks of things. You see how that edge here is a much sharper angle?
So originally it would have gone all the way...
All the way around. So you've got an edge up here, it's like a big bucket.
It would have been huge. Carved from a monster block of steatite, it was 3/4 of a metre across and weighed around 20 kilos. Big enough to hold dinner for a pretty substantial family. And their friends. When did the Vikings arrive here?
Well, it's quite difficult to know for certain. We think probably sometime in the late 8th century, probably the early 9th century.
Why do we think that?
Well, it's based really on the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, Irish annals. They tell us about the arrival of the Vikings in the late 700s. So we're extrapolating from that, really. It's very difficult to be sure otherwise.
Do finds help us?
The finds are very difficult to date specifically to that particularly early phase.
And how long did they stay here?
Well, they never went away.
What
They're
do you
still
mean?
here. Well, the genetic pool is still the same. It's still Scandinavian in origin. The culture's still Scandinavian. You've got the music, you've got the dialect, you've got the place names all around you. It's very exciting.
The people who served us in the pub last night would have been the great-great-great-grandchildren of the Vikings who were here.
Absolutely.
And they could have descended from whoever was buried in the boat. Where Magnar and the team have just discovered, we've been beaten to the treasure.
We've got different intrusions that people go into the section. I don't think we can resolve that.
Apart from the faintest traces of a robber trench, which they think could be hundreds of years old, the chamber's completely empty. We're lucky even to have got the brooch.
Sonia?
Mm-hmm.
What's it lying on? What I'm trying to get at is that it's actually lying on a stone. It's not lying on a body, as far as we can see.
No, it's lying on a stone. It's clearly not in situ, I'm afraid.
That confirms it then.
Yeah.
So this means somebody's been there already and disturbed this before we got to it.
Awfully like it, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But who the hell's going to throw a brooch like that away?
Well, perhaps they didn't see it.
Yeah, perhaps they didn't see it.
at all.
But with this black deposit on it, it may well be that it just didn't look like copper alloy. I mean, people may have been looking for gold, and I think that's what saved it.
And now comes the really tricky bit. Can Sonia get it out in one piece?
I reckon it's going to be extremely brittle, looking at the way that it's already broken on that edge.
One slip of the spatula and the brooch could shatter.
There you go, there's decoration, folks.
Oh.
Yeah. There's bits of bronze and stuff in this.
I can see the colour coming through now. Mick may have got it wrong with the boat, but he scored with the house. The extension he ordered this morning is packed with goodies. This is the junction of the back and side walls of the Viking building. And these beautiful blue slabs are the internal floor surface. What is this stone, Dave?
It's a local stone. It's called schist. And the fact that it's blue indicates that it comes from quite deep down in the earth, or so Professor Aston tells me.
That would look fantastic. Perhaps it's some sort of oil or something on it to seal it, wouldn't it?
Actually, it comes up a really dark blue, like you get on sort of like Greek floors today. Yeah.
And it means finally we can tell Nick and Lynn about their Viking house. There may only be a small bit of it in their back garden, but that's because they're actually living right on top of most of it. The original building would have looked something like this, with a drain built along the back wall to channel rainwater away from the house. Inside, it would have been paved with a beautiful blue schist floor. 1,000 years ago, this would have been home to an extended family of up to 12 people. What can we tell about what was going on in our Viking house from the finds that we've come up with?
Well, there's quite a range of things come out today. As you can see, we've got a whole range of these stones here, which are loom weights probably, and so these would have hung down to keep the upright strings taut as you were using the loom.
For weaving?
Indeed, yes.
But why were some of them so much bigger than others?
Well, they were not only used for loom weights, they were also used for holding nets down in the sea for fishing, fish nets. And it doesn't seem to be much difference between them other than the size for what they were used for.
So we've either got weaving or we've got fishing?
Or we've got both, more likely.
And what about this thing here?
Right, well this is quite interesting because it's just a simple boulder, as you can see, but if you look, it's got working on either side there, so it's obviously been wasted so that it could be used for suspension. And I think that's used for holding down the thatch on a house.
So we've got the roof?
We've got a bit of it. But this is interesting, this piece here. This is again a stone piece, but it's made of Norwegian stone.
Cool.
It's a wet stone and it's used for sharpening knives, and if you look really carefully you can see where it's been used.
So if we want evidence that we're dealing with real Vikings from Norway, this is it?
Absolutely.
Amid all the excitement of our discoveries on the two sites, geophys have been hard at work surveying the area between our Viking house and the sea.
We think we've actually got another longhouse down there.
It's a pretty good shape, isn't it?
And it's the right dimensions, the right orientation, and that's a classic location for another one.
But it's odd that there should be two Viking houses so close to each other, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thought is, if we look at this plot, You've got our house in the back garden there, the one in the geophysics there, so there might have been another two in between.
That's common, is it?
Quite common to have a sort of series of them going down towards the shore.
So one there, one there, one there, and one over there behind the house.
Fantastic.
Which means our Vikings weren't living in isolation. They were part of a larger settlement, which in turn was part of a thriving island community. These are the places where Val has identified visible signs of Viking occupation. And these are the Viking place names, like Boo and Noost, which suggest settlement. So there's still an awful lot of excavation to be done on this island, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes. We've just scratched the surface and made me want to sort of just move to Fetlar and carry on here.
With less than 100 people living on the island today, it's hard to imagine, but in Viking times, Fetlar would have been packed. Hundreds, perhaps even 1,000 people lived, worked, and died here.
So this is the critical bit, is it, Sonia?
It is, I'm afraid, yes. A bit of fragments there. Okay. Okay, I think that's it, folks. There's bits of the rim surviving here, and you can see this sort of strap decoration over it in lozenges.
Yeah.
See them here and there?
God, stone across, it's an absolute whopper, isn't it?
It is, and it's absolutely beautiful.
It looks even better after Sonia's cleaned it up. Made of bronze, embossed with studs and inlaid with the most wonderful and intricate designs, this must surely rank as one of Time Team's best ever finds. Though with only the single brooch remaining, all we can say for sure about the Giant's Grave boat is that a Viking woman was buried in it about 1,000 years ago. But it's probable she was launched on her journey to Valhalla with the symbols of her office, cooking utensils, jewellery and keys. And it's possible she took her husband with his weapons and treasure as well. And the stones? Well, there's not much topsoil here, and you'd need to cover the bodies with something to protect them from hungry animals. God, it's so heavy, isn't it? Some cooking pot. Here you are. Would you ever have guessed that we would have found something as big and as beautiful as this in your back garden?
No, not at all. It's matched all of our hopes and exceeded our expectations. It's terrific.
3 days ago you asked us 2 questions. You asked us whether there'd ever been a Viking house in your back garden, and the answer, thank you Victor, is a categorical yes. And you also asked us whether or not the Giant's Grave was actually a Viking boat burial. Once again, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you for coming.
It's been a fantastic 3 days for us, and what an incredible piece of luck that 2 such beautiful pieces of evidence as that mixing bowl and the brooch should still be there to help us tell the story of the Vikings on Fetlar 1,000 years ago.